Today on The State of Us, the new American pickup truck. Will it be all electric? Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined, of course, today by the one and only friendly redneck liberal, the senior resident historian here at True Chat, and an educator of more than 35 years, Mr. Lance L. Jackson. Today, we're talking about the American pickup truck, the new American pickup truck, the iconic symbol of America, right? That truck and the open road. And your friendly redneck liberal, well, he's got one of those pickup trucks and that American truck. And today we're going to look at 4 new trucks forthcoming, including the best-selling truck of all time, the Ford F-150, and its new all-electric version. It looks like the future might be all-electric. We'll take a look at each of those and also talk about how Ford is saying now that they're doubling their production goal of the F-150 electric pickup truck, now targeting 150,000 units a year amid high demand for the model. And automakers are supercharging their move into electric vehicles. GM, Chrysler, Sony have all unveiled future plans as the push intensifies toward battery-powered vehicles. So we'll talk about both of those first and then look at the 4 models of trucks today that we'll be talking about, 2 from GM, 1 from Ford, and 1 from a new startup, Rivian. So we'll look at all of that. But before we do, Lance, what is the word of the day?
Well, we're going to go with a big 6-syllable word. So put a little pressure on you today. Idiosyncrasy.
Oh.
Idiosyncrasy. IDIOSYNCRASY. Definitions: the temperament or mental constitution peculiar to a person or group, and or an individual reaction to something that is different from the reaction of most people. My idiosyncrasy when it comes to electric vehicles and those kinds of things, I think have been similar, but I'm starting to come around to it now as they coming up with these trucks, and some of them look pretty good, and the pricing is not too bad on the lower end compared to what I've spent in the past. And when gasoline is pushing $4 a gallon, it really makes you start to think, with my next purchase, where am I going? What am I going to do? So the idiosyncrasies of all of us play a role in our decision making.
So, Lance, how much does it cost you? How much is it costing you right now to fill up that truck?
Oh, to fill up the truck?
Yeah.
Well, it is an E85, which some people don't like, which I was getting a lot better deal on that gasoline earlier. But I like to alternate between the E85 on one tank and regular unleaded on the next tank to kind of keep the valves clean in the engine. But at $3, $3.20 a gallon, I'm pushing $75 to $80 to fill it up and getting a range of about 400 miles on a tank of gas. That's a 25-gallon tank, and it gets me about 400 miles. And I say that because the high end of a couple of these models give you a 400-mile range.
Correct.
And then we'll talk a little bit about, not to give away everything in the opening here, we'll talk a little bit about then how quickly it takes you to add miles to that when you charge, because I have learned that in the last year and a half, 2 years, that there are different levels of charging, and that, we talk about, well, you can charge it overnight anytime you want. Well, yeah, I'm out on the open road. I don't want to wait all night to be able to go again. And so we're starting to see that the manufacturers are listening to that complaint, and they're starting to put faster chargers in. Now the key becomes, right, trying to find those chargers as you're out on the road.
Well, and the other thing that's important, right, to remember here is that as we get these larger vehicles, like all these trucks that we're talking about, they need bigger batteries to have bigger ranges, but also because it's a bigger vehicle, right, its efficiency is not as good. So it needs a larger battery. And what does a larger battery mean? Well, a larger battery takes longer to charge, right? So again, that speed at which they're able to charge becomes very important. And we'll talk about that when we get into the specific models later, because that is one of the areas where there's definitely some differences in the available models. But what I was going to ask you is, you said, you're spending maybe $70 to fill up the RAM. And easily.
Closer to 80 to 100 if with the prices where they are now.
But we'll just use the low end. So if you could have a new RAM sitting in your driveway that you just, plug in at home and you don't go to the gas station, and it cost you $10 to $15 to charge it, that'd be a nice pocketbook sort of situation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, when you figure, I am currently making decisions on which car to take now because of gas prices.
Right.
And
you would need to do that.
If I was charging, I would not do that. I would take my truck because in my household, my wife and I enjoy the truck. It is the most luxurious ride that we own, and we enjoy going out in it. But like, we have a trip planned today, 2 or 3 hour trip planned this afternoon, and I'm probably going to take the subcompact car because it gets 2 to 3 times the gas mileage that the truck does. And I don't want to spend another $75 or $80 this weekend to refill the truck. I'll just use it to run around town, which doesn't get as good a gas mileage that way, but the tank of gas lasts longer, so I don't have to pull back in and pull out another $100 bill to take
And you get your new all-electric truck, and now we don't have to.
Now I don't have to worry about that. And so then, obviously, you start to figure that out, and it doesn't nearly make the payment, but if you're spending $150 to $200 a month on gasoline for it, and you take that down to $50, you're saving $100 to $150 that goes towards the payment of the truck just in fuel savings.
Now, if you're wanting a new vehicle anyway, then yes, because generally speaking, you're probably going to find something in a similar price range. And as we have talked about on previous episodes, we figured out, for Brett and I's case, now we drive a, not technically a compact, but a hatchback vehicle.
Yeah, I can't haul any wood in your bolts.
Oh, sure you can.
Well, yeah, 3 or 4 sticks of wood, right? You can have one fire, I can't move musical sets for my daughter in your bolt.
Well, yeah, maybe not musical sets. If they break down.
I can't tow a float in the homecoming parade with your bolt.
No.
I need my truck for there's some things I need my truck for.
Yes.
I can't move a new bedroom suit for my daughter that she just bought in your bolt.
That's correct.
So I need my truck for those occasions.
But the scenario there being, right, that we've seen anyway in our use case, we were probably spending with our gas vehicle because Brett commutes to Columbus regularly. You were talking about, even with, we had very fuel efficient vehicles, $200, $250, $300 a month.
Sure.
In gas. We're not talking about the payment, right? Just in the fuel to get there.
Sure. Well, what you're
back.
talking about for those new listeners out there, a drive to Columbus and back
50 minutes
is right about 100 miles. So you're putting 100 miles on your car round trip for a typical drive to Columbus. And so if you're making that drive 3 or 4 times a week because Brett works 12-hour shifts, so 3 or 4 hours a week, you're 300 or 400 miles in a week just driving to and from work. So it's a tank of gas.
As we look at that, right, that's part of many considerations to be keeping in mind as we talk about the economics of it, the value of it, that kind of thing. Because the reality is, and this is one of the articles, is how all of these automakers, right, are showing off these transitions. And it wasn't that long ago, at the start of January, CES, which is a consumer electronics show that's the actual. It's a big, for those that don't know, it's a big technology conference every year. And it was in Las Vegas this year. And the highlight definitely of the show was all these different EVs that were being showed off, right?
Well, you know what? And then, not to interrupt here, but watching the Super Bowl, I was amazed at the number of electric vehicle commercials that were on. I'm like, Okay. I mean, I get that the Super Bowl was on the West Coast and stuff, but the Super Bowl is the most watched TV show. And that was, one of my interests besides the game was, okay, who's going to pay the advertising dollars that the Super Bowl charges? And it was amazing to me, being this Midwesterner who drives a big old, gas powered pickup truck, the number of EV commercials for different companies for different cars. That really caught my attention. So it's interesting that you mentioned this, show that was in Vegas about these electric vehicles, and there's a real move in the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 or 3 years. You've bought yours, over that time span, but it's interesting now to see it becoming part of the mainstream. And like you mentioned, the Ford F-150 has over 200,000 applicants waiting for the right to buy one of the first 100,000 trucks that come on. So that's why they're increasing production, is they have more people saying, yes, I would like to buy one of these than they're producing in their first year.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the important thing to remember too, is you put it in perspective of what a company is selling every year as well. And Ford, I believe it was like 1.8 million. I was looking for it here. I think it was 1.8 million vehicles last year that they sold. So, I mean, 200,000 of 1.8 million is
about 10%, right?
I mean, but that's a respectable 10%. Segment of your
sure.
sales.
Sure.
That's a notable piece.
Well, and it's one model.
Right.
I mean, you're looking at a electric pickup. One model is 10%.
That's commanding 10% of your total vehicle.
And obviously
sales.
You can get top dollar for it because you have more people, the way capitalism works, right?
Right.
One of the idiosyncrasies of capitalism is that if more people want something, you can get a better price for it when you want to go sell it.
And I think something else to keep in mind is, you see some of these other new companies getting into the vehicle game. And you might say, well, why is that? We haven't really seen much of that over the last, 50 years or so. It's pretty much been the same players in the car making business that have always been. Well, one of the reasons is because these vehicles are much simpler to manufacture. Very interesting to see. And that's what we're going to talk about coming up next are 4 models, 2 from GM, 1 from Ford, and of course, 1 from a startup, Rivian. So we'll look at those and we'll find out what model the friendly redneck liberal gives his stamp of approval for. He'd be seen driving it. He might let it sit in his driveway if it was bequeathed to him. So, well, he'd probably let any of these sit in his driveway if they were.
Somebody's going to give me that? Yeah, that's one of my idiosyncrasies too. I'm cheap. Somebody wants to give me one of these and buy it for me? Yeah. I'll take it. I'll drive it.
You mean that if somebody plops down a $120,000 Hummer in your driveway, you're not going to turn it down?
No, especially an electric one. Because then my moral licensing takes over.
That's right.
I'm not I'm not ruining the environment driving a Hummer. Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. So let's take a look at these models and talk about which one might be right for you and which one might be the new American pickup truck. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. The electric pickup truck class is heating up in the U.S. with a host of new arrivals unveiled in the past 12 months. The latest to break cover was the Chevrolet Silverado Ev, which offers serious competition for the hotly anticipated Ford F-150 Lightning and the reborn Hummer Ev and the futuristic Rivien R1t. So first up, the Chevrolet Silverado Ev. Let's talk about power. Over 660 horsepower with wide open watts, under 4.5 seconds, 0 to 60 with wide open watts, and over 780 pound-feet of torque, and an available 400-mile range. Rapid charging at 350 kilowatts. And let's talk about towing as well, right? Because pickup trucks, up to 10,000 pounds of towing capacity. And over 1,000 pounds of payload capacity. So again, a truck in the truest sense of a truck. The pricing, because great, it sounds like a beast. What is it going to cost? Well, It's looking like, based on what Chevy has told us, $39,900 to $105,000, depending on obviously how you choose to spec it out. The entry level version being what they deem as the work truck. Okay, so this is your like fleet level, commercial grade sort of entry point. And then your more standard consumer editions obviously build off of that with more features, more luxury, etc. So what's your takeaway, Lance, from everything you've heard about the Silverado EV?
Well, I like it because it's standard 4-wheel drive. You get a 400-mile range. You have the rapid charging, the 350W, for those of you like me who really don't know what that means. But here's an example. At that speed, you can actually add about 100 miles of range in about 10 minutes. So if you find a fast charger somewhere that works to that capacity, I like it. It's got a 6-foot bed that never has to be made. Nice song. There for my country folks. And I like that. And I like as well, and I don't know then how much you have to pay for it, but it also has the ability to go to a 10-foot bed, and it's got some different ranges there. But the basic price is good. It's a good solid work truck. It has a 400-mile range, and it has a fast charger. And the price is not any more than what I paid for what I currently drive, when I bought it brand new. And so for all of those things, it's like, well, geez, if I'm going to replace it, this looks pretty good. It's got basically the same stuff I have already. It'll charge pretty quickly, and I have the same towing capacity and the same room in the bed of the truck.
The other thing is, I think the standout feature here, just to be clear with everybody, is that charging capability and the range, because those are items with EVs that we've heard a lot about. A 400-mile range and 350 kilowatt charging. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the 4 other vehicles. It's better than...
None of them have that.
Right. None of them have that. So it is truly the top end when it comes to that. And there are a number of 350 watt, basically ultra fast chargers out there now. I've actually been to several of them. An important thing to understand, because Lance mentioned this, and I think not everybody gets this right, is that not every vehicle can do that. And what I mean by that is, even if you have a 350 kilowatt charger, that doesn't mean your vehicle is going to charge at 350 kilowatts. It has to be capable of charging at that speed. So if it cannot charge at that speed, then it doesn't matter that the charger's that much. It'll only charge at whatever its maximum ability is. For example, and just for perspective, the Chevy Bolt, which is what I drive, Chevy Bolt EV, that vehicle has a 65 kilowatt hour battery and charges at a maximum of 50 kilowatts an hour. Okay. So this charges at 350 kilowatts versus 50 kilowatts, right?
But I can still, and here's where I don't know. So you're going to teach me something. Could I still pull up to your house and plug my new truck in, and it would still charge? It would be slower, but I could still charge at a slower charger.
That's correct.
If I can find a maximum one, that's my best bet. But if I can't find one and I have to use a slower one, my faster charging rate capability still allows me to use a slower rate charger to get some more miles into my vehicle.
That's correct. Okay. Well, for example, like at home, Lance, you're not going to be charging at 350 kilowatts because you don't have that infrastructure at your house.
But the thing right now is, obviously, if this catches on like it looks like it's going to, the chargers will continue to improve.
Correct.
But to get a 350 watt charger at this point means it's probably going to be one of the better things that are out there for the life of the time I'm going to have that vehicle, I guess is my thinking. I don't want to buy something that's going to be outdated in 2 or 3 years. If I have a 350 watt charger,
you're going to be good.
I'm going to be able to charge my truck just about anywhere as fast as any place else for the life that I'm going to want to drive the truck.
Correct. And that'll continue to improve.
And that's what I like. But exactly, because I know also in 10 years, we may have 500 or 750 watt chargers out there, which is fine. But I don't
that's
want to
not
buy,
going to make it so that you
but I don't
can't
wanna,
charge.
Exactly. And I don't want to buy something now that's the low end that's outdated in 2 years, because for me, one of my idiosyncrasies is that I keep a vehicle for an extended period of time. I don't buy new vehicles every couple of years.
Now, the 2022 Ford F-150 Lightning. I want to mention this because I think this is important. One of the ways that Ford was able to get this to market so fast, Lance, is they actually used the existing design and body of the current F-150, okay? And basically they removed the engine, plopped in the battery and the electric motors, okay? So if you're looking for something that's kind of like a one-for-one sort of thing.
It looks the most like the current trucks.
Correct.
Of the four, that's the one.
Well, it literally is the body.
Well, and that's why, right?
Truck.
I mean, but I didn't know that till you said that.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you handed this to me and said choose, and I read about them and I looked at the pictures, it's like, well, yeah, the Ford looks like a truck. Because the rest of them are a little bit, you know, revamped and different lines on them. So it doesn't quite look like a truck. The F-150 looks like a truck. Looks like a truck I'd jump in right now. And the price is decent. You know, the price is good, and I like it. And you know,
well, like here, Lance,
it would be my second, probably 2A choice. But the thing that gets me, it's only got a 200 to 300 mile radius, and the charging speed is at 150 kilowatts. So that's where that's not the draw to me. I mean, I can buy a Chevy Silverado for about the same price as I'm going to buy a Ford F-150. And I get 25% more range and twice as much speed capability to recharge. Same price. I'm going with the Chevy Silverado. Not that I think the F-150 is a bad deal. I think it's a nice looking truck.
And if you look up at the screen, Lance, I mean, you can see just how similar. This is the 2021 Ford F-150 gas powered vehicle. Right. And I mean, if you look at, you can see what they changed out was they changed the tires. They obviously in the front, you don't have a grill. You have a, you know, fake grill basically. And so, I mean, but by all intents and purposes, it's practically the same vehicle. You know, it's just, but Ford, in fairness, right? I mean, they sell the most pickup trucks of anybody. So they know something about what they're doing.
Well, I don't dislike it.
Right.
Again, you know, I like it. But if I'm going to spend basically the same amount of money, I would rather have, because of what the Silverado offers in distance and charging, I would, you know, equal money. I would rather have that. But I think the F-150 is a nice looking truck and very solid, very standard, as well do most Americans. To your point, it's the most bought truck in America.
And just from a power standpoint, right, 426 to 563 horsepower, so not quite as much at the top end as the Silverado EV. And again, towing capacity 7,700 up to 10,000 pounds. So, you know, pretty much one for one. But again, the starting level is probably going to be a little bit higher with the Silverado EV. The top end is going to be similar. The biggest difference is that range, which is how big of a battery basically the vehicle has, and then also that charging capability. Those are really the two big differences between the vehicles. The third big difference would be the style, right? I mean, I think the Silverado EV definitely is more resembling of a Chevy vehicle than it is of anything else. And the Ford definitely looks like a Ford, but the Silverado EV does not necessarily remind you of a Silverado.
Doesn't remind me of a truck.
Right.
It's a little futuristic.
Yeah. Yep. But it's got it is it is futuristic. They decided to go a little bit more on that luxury, you know, sort of ultra clean line appearance sort of thing. One of the reasons that some manufacturers are going that way too is when you're talking about efficiency and how often you have to charge. Everything you can do to reduce drag, right?
The aerodynamics are huge, right?
Which we've seen, I mean, in fairness, even with traditional trucks, we've seen that move in the past, 6-7 years where everything's becoming, as much as possible, they're lowering. The biggest thing I noticed, Lance, when I went from my older truck to my new Silverado, and then when my dad got his Silverado, the current one that he has, the profile difference of how they've arranged the cab, the windshield is much shorter than it used to be, right? They've drastically shortened it and increased the curve and set you down lower than you used to be. The truck may sit at the same height, but the way they've adjusted the cab, the seating, and the hood all have an impact on, and so they've already been moving that way. As we had covered before, they've already kind of eked out what they can on the efficiency. So everything now is, where do you squeeze out that last bit? So they'll probably keep moving that direction. All right, so we'll talk about the last two coming up. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. The Gmc Hummer EV. That's right, the Hummer is back. And arguably, it is better than ever. You're talking about closing in on 1,000 horsepower and over 10,000 pound-feet of torque with a 250 to like 330 mile range, 300 kilowatt rapid charging. And let's be honest, if you're buying a Hummer, it's partly because of the excess of the luxury of we're doing it because we can do it. And I think one of those things, the whole idea of talking about a 0 to 60 time on a truck, Lance, is kind of one of those things that was a farce up until trucks became electric. But now you can look at the GMC Hummer EV and say, well, we care, because when you go to watts to freedom, and by the way, I'll give you just a second there. What's that abbreviation? WTF.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
No, this was an intentional marketing thing. Like, let's be honest, okay?
Sure.
When you use WTF mode, you can take your Hummer from 0 to 62 miles an hour in just under 3 seconds.
And if you're out there, if you're driving down the creek bed, its standout feature is a crab walk.
That's correct.
The tires actually move independently and let you kind of walk over
sideways.
Yeah, sideways over the rocks in the stream bed.
Yes.
So interesting, but hey, 80,000 low end, right? $80,000 to $111,000. So
it's got an armored underbelly for rock crawling. It has, I believe it's 10 camera angles, including angles that are underneath the truck.
But a 250 to 300 mile range and a 300 kilowatt charger. So, I've never been a Hummer fan, even when, the gas powered ones. But it's sharp. Like you said, you're making a fashion statement to buy a Hummer.
It's a Bradley type vehicle.
Yeah, an $80,000 to $100,000, $80,000 low end. Sorry, I didn't pay that for the house I currently live in. When I bought it, 30 years ago, I didn't pay that much. That's just a little hard for the old man to swallow. To $80,000 for a vehicle. Bit of a cost. But again, the point here was to. But it's a Hummer.
It's a Hummer.
It's got everything that you'd want. And 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. There you go.
The roof can mostly be taken off as well, Lance, so that you got the open air kind of feel going. It's pretty crazy piece of machinery. But again, I think we included it kind of for fun. It's really not fair to stack it against these other ones, because from a general consumer standpoint, it's really not in the range of something that the average American's probably going to consider buying. But it is an excellent example of the grotesque end of what electric is capable of doing.
Sure.
And we'd be remiss if we went a whole show without mentioning it's not even a truck, but just how gross is electric getting? Well, the new Tesla Roadster, the top end model, they're projecting like 1.3 seconds on the 0 to 60. So again, I think it's indisputable at this point. Electric is better than gas when it comes to power and speed, because you just can't beat direct energy. It's just a basic principle of direct power is better, faster and stronger. So, all right, the last one, Lance, and this is the one that a lot of people have been very interested in, because this is, I guess I'm trying to think of the way to describe this. This isn't your classic truck person, okay? This is kind of a maybe middle class, upper middle class American family who maybe lives in the city, needs something that's not quite as big and bulky, but wants something that's got the luxury, the futuristic styling. And if they want to take it out, for camping or something, it's got some unique features. And that's the Rivien R1t. So this is a new startup company. From a power standpoint, it does pretty well there. It's got similar, horsepower to the Silverado Ev and similar torque capabilities. Its range, 314 to 400 miles or above. So again, fairly similar there. 200 kilowatt fast charging. So sits in between, closer to the F-150, but in between the F-150 and the Silverado. And its pricing, $67,500 to $83,000. So a much smaller range of options available as well, in terms of what it cost. The biggest thing, Lance, that I think about this vehicle that's very interesting is the space between the bed and the back seat, kind of under the bed. They've got this compartment that opens that you have this huge storage space for. And they've even built now an option where you can slide out an entire cooktop, sink, and small refrigeration out of that space. And you still have your bed, like it doesn't sacrifice your bed space. So it's a very innovative, again, if you're looking to be trendy, sort of on the front line of what is possible, it's not so much about being the strongest, the toughest, the best range. It has very respectable measures in those areas, and in some cases better than the F-150. But it also comes in at a substantially higher starting price than the F-150 as well. Yeah,
it's not as expensive on the high end as everything else, but its base model is, $25,000, $30,000 more. The range is decent. The smaller battery selection is 300 miles. You can go up to a 400-mile range for another $10,000. But the bed's only 4.5 feet. So it's got some cool features. Like you said, for that person that's not using it as a work truck, it's
if you're casual truck.
Yeah, it's a trendy, I would look at it, as you said, kind of a cityfied truck, where you say, yeah, I'm driving a truck. And, you got all this cool stuff with it. But you're not going to really be able to do any truck work with it, real truck work. I mean,
right.
You might be able to run to your local hardware store and, kind of put a piece of plywood or sheetrock in there at an angle and tie it down really well. But it's not like you can just throw it in there. But
if you're only doing that once or twice a year, that's not.
It's more important to look cool and have what looks like a truck, even though it's not really a truck, and you're willing to spend the extra money. It's a nice selection, but it's more of a niche market, I think, than truckers. Than somebody who wants to drive a pickup truck like me. I'm not bashing on it. It's got some nice features. It's not what I would want to have if I'm going to buy a truck.
Well, because the Ford and the Silverado both have like your standard about 6-foot bed. So you're talking about losing almost 1.5 feet. Which doesn't sound like a big deal, but if
you're somebody who uses a truck, it makes a difference.
The other standout thing we didn't mention about the Silverado that the Ford does not have is the midgate, which actually allows you to take it up to 10 feet of bed space.
I did say that.
Oh, you did?
I did say that because that's why. No, that's my big. If I didn't, I meant to say it because that's why it wins out. Right. I mean, it's like, that's because I do have 3 or 4 times a year where I haul stuff like that. That extra footage would be huge.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know what the base price would be to get the features that I wanted. But that's why the Silverado wins out for me, even though it doesn't look like a truck that it doesn't look bad. It's just, it doesn't look like the truck I'm driving.
I think the more you see it, the more you like it kind of thing.
But
it is that you're moving from a concept, right, of what we have decided trucks look like, and they have looked like for the last 10, 15 years.
But I probably won't buy one. Somebody's going to have to get it for me because in my mind, for the next 10 years or so that I'll probably be driving, I'm hoping I still have my current truck because that fits into my budget and my style.
Yes.
It's 6 years old.
I told Ram's got to get in the game because that might be the thing that
it's 6 years old, and I don't see myself driving for a lot longer. I I mean, not long enough that you say, well, you're going to drive a 16-year-old truck? Well, that's just when it starts getting broken in. That's when it starts looking good. You get a little rust on it, get a little hole in it here or there, and you can just drive it anywhere you want because you don't care, you know? So, I mean, I haven't even...
And you get older, you bump into a few more things.
Right.
And,
you don't want something nice that ruins it if you got an old beater, right? That's perfect.
The old friendly redneck liberal and his old beater truck.
Yeah. But here comes Mr. Jackson down the road. Everybody watch out.
Yeah, get out of the way.
He uses both lanes now.
That's right. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think, again, the article that we referenced, the conclusion was overall, the Silverado EV is probably going to be the choice. Just
that makes me not want to choose the Silverado.
From a purely on paper standpoint, right?
When the author of the article, I mean, I never go with the man, you know, I'm always fighting the man.
Well, they're not really the man. They're drivingelectric.com. So like,
gotcha.
You know what I mean? That's not.
Okay.
If it was the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, then you kind of be fine.
So it's okay for me to like
site.
the same one that they liked.
That's right.
Okay.
Because they're kind of the rebel. I mean, because even the Hummer, you get a better range for a more competitive price with the Silverado EV than you do the Hummer. I'm sure some of that's also the Hummer's bigger, heavier. You know, there's even if they have the same size battery, the poor Hummer, you know, it's just like the gas guzzling Hummers, right? Of the good old days of you got to have 2 tanks and you got to fill them all the way full to go about, 150 miles
to go across town. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, I mean, it's, similar principle. So anyway, that's the review here of the various trucks coming out. Which one is the next American pickup truck? Take your idiosyncrasies into account. Send us an email, podcast@thestateofus.org. We'd like to hear from you. I think Lance thought he might get a blowout, but not quite.
I was going to make the comment. I got a shutout.
Oh, I knew it was, I had to get on the board, Couldn't let it be a total
6 syllables.
Devastation.
I guarantee to win.
So why we have this conversation a little more lighthearted today, but talk about some of the options coming out. Why we have that conversation?
Well, it was fun. I like talking about trucks, and it's convincing me more and more towards the electric vehicles. I mean, if you've been a long-time listener to the show, you know that I was not a fan. And with these trucks, I'm excited. Any of our loyal listeners want to put up a GoFundMe page to buy me one, I'll gladly take it. But no, we have these talks every once in a while because here at True Chat, our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And, we've had this conversation about EV trucks and what's out there. And as you look to buy your next one, hopefully it'll help you get started to find out what you want. And if you enjoyed today's show and you're talking to people, tell them, hey, you can listen to these guys as well. And they're very entertaining as well as full of information. And then you can find our show on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us is available Tuesdays and Thursdays as a podcast first thing in the morning. And we're heard on the weekends in select talk radio markets. There we go. Around the country. We'll get it right eventually. Hopefully around the world at some point, but you can hear us as a podcast around the world, but on traditional radio only across the United States of America. Such a disappointment, but it is what it is. For the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jack.
Special thanks to our producer and Hummer driver, Bradley Butch. Thank you, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.